Hi, everybody, it's Jessica, and this is another edition of Raleigh Rambles where I process something that I'm thinking about out loud and share it with all of you. Today is a special Raleigh Rambles because, as you can see, I am stationary. I am not driving in my car, and I want to think through a question that was asked of my team. My boss, Ben Wilkoff, posed the question on Twitter of what do you think the difference is between collaboration and teamwork? And I thought that was a really interesting question. And we happen every week at our team meetings to start off with sharing a story of learning, something that we've reflected on or learned about or have just been pondering over the previous week. And so I thought this would be a perfect way to bring those two things together, think through this question that I'm intrigued by, and then be able to share that with my team tomorrow. So the first thing that I always do when someone asks me, what is the difference, or what is the definition of, or what does it mean? The first thing I always do is look up the actual dictionary definition of certain words. So I went to Webster's and I looked up the definitions of teamwork and of collaboration, and I was looking at some of the examples and some of the definitions that are given for those things. And then the next thing that I always do is I start Googling and I start looking for what other people have written or shared about on the topic. And I found actually some really interesting articles. I'm sure that I will be continuing to read more and adding to my thoughts over the course of the next couple of days, but I wanted to kind of grab this moment that I had to record a video because all these moments to record videos are a bit fleeting, and so I wanted to make sure that I had a chance to think through a couple of the articles that I found. So one of them that I thought was really interesting, and I'll put the links all in the comments below, but one of the things that I thought was helpful in kind of distinguishing between teamwork and collaboration was an article that I found where they actually were sharing a graphic and they were talking about cooperation, teamwork, and collaboration. So they kind of defined cooperation as sort of the bottom, and this idea that as purpose and interdependence go up, that you kind of move from cooperation to teamwork to collaboration. And so the idea with cooperation is essentially that, we're helping each other out. I'm doing something for you, you're doing something for me, but our goals are different. We have different things that we are ultimately trying to accomplish, but by me helping you out, you're helping me accomplish my goals and vice versa. So I thought that was an interesting thing to distinguish because I think sometimes we talk about collaboration or teamwork as us helping each other out to meet our separate goals, when in fact really that by this definition would be cooperation. The next piece of that is taking it to the level of teamwork, and a lot of the things that I read were talking about how teamwork is different from collaboration because when you are involved in a team, you share a common goal. So teamwork means that we all have a shared goal. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing, and we're going to work together to make that happen. Now, that shared goal may also be something that we are trying to accomplish in our own worlds or our own work, if that makes sense. But essentially, you're going to be making sure that everyone who's on that team is showing up to get this one thing done, make sure that this one goal is accomplished. So that to me also speaks to having a shared vision that we all are trying to get to the same place and in a lot of ways get there in the same way. Another distinction with teamwork that I read about was the idea of teams having leaders. So they were talking a lot about how when you have a team, you are making sure that someone has, in a sense, authority to handle disputes, to, create action items, to keep things moving forward, to make sure that all the members of the team are not disrupting or taking sort of any steps backwards in the process, making sure that they are really acting as a leader and that they are stepping up to make sure that all the team members are working well together. And ultimately, some of the articles were talking about in a team situation, the leader has the authority to remove people from the team if those team members are not contributing in a way that is supporting the greater good, in essence, and helping the team to accomplish their goals. So I thought that was very interesting that there's a difference there, that they're really saying that teamwork means there's an authority figure, there's someone in a leadership position, and that when you then take it to that final step of collaboration, that what you're going to have in collaboration is the idea that there's so many interdependencies among your team and my team and that team over there that you need to come together and have a shared purpose so that you can each kind of get to your final goals. So you wouldn't have one leader who's necessarily the authority and saying, this is the goal, this is what we're doing, and that also means that there is not one person who has the accountability. I think a lot, I was talking to someone yesterday, I think in Voxer, just about how, I'm really in a position where I'm excited to lead and to be sort of in charge a little bit more. And that I know that's going to come with a lot of challenges and a lot of responsibility and a lot of missteps, really. Like I know I'm going to do things and look back on it and go, oh, geez, should have done that differently. But again, that's learning, right? Like when we look back and we reflect and we say, ooh, I did not handle myself well in that situation, or I did not go about that in the way that I would in the future, that's learning, because we're able to have those experiences that help us to learn. And so I understand that by being a leader, that also means that you have more accountability on you. At the end of the day, you are responsible. It's sort of a make or break situation where you are in charge of making sure that whatever the goals are of your team, whatever is going on with your team members, like all of that rests on you. And, perhaps that's a little bit of an archaic idea of leadership. I'm not really sure. I think some people would think, well, no, on a really highly collaborative team, the leader and all of their employees are just as responsible for making sure that the team works and making sure that the goals are met and all of that kind of stuff, that it's because it's a collaborative effort that sort of the buck stops with all of them and they all should have that same level of ownership and accountability. But I don't know that I believe that. I really do believe in, and again, I'm sure that if I had, more leadership opportunities and through more experiences of being a leader, maybe my ideas about this would change. But from my current view and my previous experiences of leading and of managing a team of 16 people and making sure that everything, all the moving pieces were getting accomplished, there's a fine line between leadership and management, first of all. I think they both have to work together really well. And some people are really strong leaders and not really strong managers, and vice versa. And I think that the thing that makes sort of, in my mind, the penultimate leader is that they are great leaders and managers. In any event, I think that what happens with really strong leadership on a team is that leader takes the onus and they are the ones who make sure that no matter what, come hell or high water, this is going to get accomplished. And a lot of times as a leader, that means when your team is struggling, you kind of have to go in there and get things done. And different leaders have different styles of doing that. My style personally is very much of, reaching out to people and saying, like, it seems like you're struggling with this. What do you need? What can I do? How can I help with this? What do you need from me? What barriers can I maybe clear for you? Like, all of those things are just tiny bits of the whole process of being a leader and making sure that a team can ultimately get to their end goal and that there's success in what it is you're trying to accomplish. All of that being aside, clearly that's also something that's on my mind. Should be a separate video, but we're not there yet, guys. We're just processing here. We're rambling it out. So then when you take all of that and you put it together and you think about that difference between collaboration and teamwork, the idea of collaborating is that there is more of a shared ownership, but I think that also means sometimes that there's more of kind of this like give and take, and people need to kind of feel out, well, where can I push and where do I need to take a step back, and choosing your battles, all of those things. And a lot of times I think collaboration means that you have to have really strong relationships with people. I believe that no matter what, team, collaboration, all of these things, like relationships are key. I always start with community and relationships, and that to me is part of the culture that's so important. But I can totally see how ultimately collaborators need to build really strong relationships and know each other well enough that they know how to push and pull, and they know how to challenge people on certain ideas, or know when to kind of pull back with other ideas. And so I think that is a key part of collaboration. Another thing that I thought was interesting in the articles is that they were talking about how a lot of times your collaborative leadership is context dependent. So leaders arise when and as needed. And so to me, that really spoke to me that in a collaboration, you might have one leader sort of emerge and lead something, and then they're going to sort of pull back, and another leader might emerge and sort of take the reins on something else. But you don't have one person who's sort of continuing to move that forward. You're kind of having people step in and out of a leadership role, essentially. So that's something I'm going to be thinking about more, because I could totally see how, maybe in a collaboration, if you do identify one specific person who's sort of leading, I'm thinking about when we planned Ed Camp Denver, that to me is very much a strong collaboration. But the way that we organized it this year, I basically acted as the event manager and made sure that I was setting up all of the hangouts for us to do our planning meetings and making sure I was communicating with all the different teams. And so if I kind of think about all of the things that I'm learning now in the differences between teamwork and collaboration, I'm actually thinking back to a lot of that planning process was teamwork, not collaboration. I think there was a lot of collaborative work happening in other parts of the planning process, but it sort of in its overall getting the plan and making sure everything was ready for this event, I was the leader of all those pieces, and I was making sure. Now it has a different set of sort of authority than perhaps you would have in a work situation, and in that way I think it is more collaborative. But yeah, I think that's a difference for me. So I think that was a couple of the big things. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that there was something in one of the articles that says, for collaborative cultures to flourish, transparent and context-rich communication is essential. Wow. So if I were to kind of dig around in that statement a little bit, I think, again, I believe so strongly in culture. And I thought that the idea that transparency, context, and communication are kind of the three things that stuck out to me. And those really resonate with me because those are three things that I think about constantly thinking about transparency and when is transparency helpful and when can it be a hindrance and what does it even mean? Because I think sometimes we say transparency and we just think that means communication. Well, really, communication and transparency are two different things. And so, I think it's important to know when is the right time to be transparent and just sort of an open book, and when are specific communications necessary. I guess I could liken it to, if if I just share out a tweet and I say something that I'm thinking about that's, work related, that might be considered transparency. I'm being very transparent about questions that are rambling around in my head and thinking that I'm doing on a certain topic. But communication might be me saying to my teammates, hey, I've been thinking about this problem we're trying to solve. Here's what I'm thinking so far. Can I get your feedback on this? What are you thinking? Or, in very, very simplistic and watered down terms, it could even be like me tweeting and saying, I'm going to this event next week and putting it out there. That's transparency. Versus communication would be me telling my team, hey, just so you know, I'm not going to be here next week because I'm going to this event and I've put that on your calendar so that you know that I'm gone. I think that communication and transparency are different. I still have to dig a little deeper as to how they're different and think about what that looks like and sounds like and all of that. But that's kind of where I'm at right now with transparency and communication. And then that idea of context was really interesting to me too, because I think that something that I've noticed about myself, I actually recorded or wrote a blog post I was doing for a while, light rail learnings, and I was, things that I was thinking about and learning and just things that came up for me when I was riding the light rail. I was doing blog posts and tweets and things about that. And one of the ones that I had was like this huge aha moment for me on the light rail, where I realized that I rely so completely on context and that I really struggle when I don't have that context. And so it was a situation where I got onto the train. Normally I get on and off at like the farthest stops. So I'm always, the first one on the train and the last one off the train, essentially, no matter which way I'm going. And I ended up, a friend dropped me off at one of the light rail stations a few stops farther from where I normally get on. And I walked onto this busy train on like a Friday night, and there were people everywhere, and there were all these things going on. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do with myself. Because normally I would step onto a train and I would have all the context. I would know that, oh, that elderly man standing there has already been offered a seat by the woman sitting next to him, and he said no thank you. And so he's standing because he wants to, not because someone's being rude and not giving up their seat. And these people over here don't know each other, but they've swapped seats around so that they can sit by the people who they do. Like, there's just so many things going on just in like the situation of a bunch of strangers on a train and / people who know each other if they're riding together. But I just realized that I felt uber uncomfortable when I stepped onto that train because I didn't know, like, where should I stand and what should I stand here? Should I try to get that seat? Like, I don't know why it was such a moment of like, haha, you need context. You live and breathe context, and you are set up for success when you have all of the context, because I'm someone who's always thinking about all the things and all the people and all the pieces, and then I have to put them together before I can make informed decisions, or before I can even just make choices about how I proceed and how I handle myself and all of those kinds of things. So context is fascinating to me, and I'm always thinking about that and trying to figure out ways that I can advocate with people I work for the context that I need. So I think when you think about collaboration, you think about what context is needed. I think that is context of people. Like I said before, relationships are really important. So if I don't know most of the people I'm collaborating with, I've had all these moments lately where I walk into a meeting or I'm sitting in a meeting and there's almost this like assumption that everybody knows everybody, and the person who's leading the meeting just sort of launches into the content of the meeting, and I'm left sitting there kind of looking around and being like, who are these people? And am I supposed to know who they are? Have I met them before? And I'm the jerk who doesn't remember them and doesn't know who they are and why they're here. Like, context, guys. I need context. So those kinds of things, of just simple things like, let's make sure that we make time for introductions, and let's make sure that we, even if it's something like the first 5 minutes of every meeting on a collaborative kind of group that's coming together are going to be us sharing, a little bit about ourselves, or, remind everybody your name, your department, and and then just like a funny prompt or something, like anything to sort of like help build relationships. I don't like spending a ton of time doing like super hokey things all the time, but I do think that there's value there, and you need context of who people are, because then if we feel comfortable and we have started to create that community, again, I can push, I can kind of pull back. I know how to speak to different people. I'm starting to know sort of their preferences as learners and leaders and what they need from me and how I can best set them up for success when we're collaborating as well. So I think context of relationships and people is really huge. I also think context of just like what it is we're trying to accomplish. And maybe that's not exactly context, but I kind of think about that as, sometimes people on teams will like pull aside and have side conversations, and then you'll be now supposed to be working with those people, but you've missed a whole meeting, or, like I super struggle in those situations. If I haven't been there for a whole conversation, even if someone has taken great notes, reading notes and, like is like my worst case. Well, my worst case scenario is there's no notes or anything and I just don't know what's going on. Up from that would be I've got notes that I can look at. Up from that would be I've got notes that I can look at and someone who can kind of talk me through those notes and share their own perspective of like, hey, this is what happened, here's some updates, whatever, what questions you have. And then like obviously my ideal would be I just want to be in the room, because what someone else gets out of something is going to be different from me, and their entry point to something might be different, or their perspective or the lens in which they are seeking to understand and looking for information and making decisions might be totally different than mine. So I think that all of those things are important for context as well. So anyway, this is getting probably way too long for any reasonable length of video, but I am really excited to continue talking about context and relationships and leadership and how all of those things impact cooperation, teamwork, and collaboration. And I'm really going to be thinking more about this, and I would love to know what you're thinking as well. So if you have ideas, if you have other articles or books or people quotes, even people who talk about the differences and the similarities of these things, I would love to know about that. So please do share those in the comments. Hope everybody is having a great day, and I will talk to you all very soon.